It's TK Friday and something a little different today. Today I have a flower image for you. This will be another full edit working with the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. Stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. It is TK Friday and thank you for joining me today. Today I have a flower image for you and I'm calling this one Budding Friendship. It reminds me of two friends. This is one of my own images. Now you can download the image as well as the PDF notes. You'll find the image and notes in the description below this video. Click on more so you can open up the description. Scroll down through and you'll find the Dropbox links for the image as well as the PDF notes. By the way, if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, I'll have links in the description below where you can pick it up along with training videos. And right now there is a new free panel you can pick up. It's the TK print panel. So if you're into printing, I highly recommend that you pick it up. It's absolutely free. And then Sean Bagshaw made a video series to go along with this plugin to show you how to use it, so you can download that for free. And right now there is a launch sale going on over at the TK web store. Now if you'll use my promo code DK15, that will give you 25% off anything you purchase over at the TK web store. But use my promo code, and I appreciate it if you do. If you use that code, I'll make a small commission, and this helps me to keep these TK Friday videos coming your way. You're supporting my channel when you do that, so thank you. So remember, the promo code DK15 will give you 25% off during the introductory launch sale. Thank you for using my code. And thanks for viewing in, and happy editing. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Now, as always, I start out here in Lightroom, and I'm using a linear profile for my Canon 5D Mark II. I shot this with a 200mm lens with a close-up filter attached, so I'm getting some really nice bokeh in the background. And I do my basic adjustments like I always do, because I want a relatively flat image going into Photoshop, where I'll use the TK9 plugin for Photoshop for my edit. Now, the other thing I've done is for lens corrections, I always check on remove chromatic aberrations and enable profile corrections. I've also sent this image into Topaz Photo AI for some sharpening. So when you get your image, it's going to have a bit of sharpening on it. And it's going to look just like this, by the way. And so now with these basic adjustments, I just right-click on the image, go to Edit In, click on Edit in Photoshop 2024. But as always, I'm already there, and I'll see you in Photoshop. Here we are inside of Photoshop, and as you can see, here's my Topaz Photo AI layer where I added some sharpening to the image. And this image, now, here's my philosophy on flower photography, and I do a lot of flower photography. The first thing I do is when I get my image into Photoshop is I study it. For instance, see this little leaf here out of focus? I don't like it. There's some light around the edge here. There's some blemishes here on this leaf. There's some blemishes on the flower. So the first thing I do is grab the remove tool in Photoshop. I love the remove tool. And usually what I'll do is click this button on the combo or CX panel to give myself a blank pixel layer and make sure I have sample all layers checked. And I have checked on remove after each stroke. And I'll just start to clean this image up, and I love the remove tool. And I've left your image just like this so you can get some practice with the remove tool if you haven't used it that much. I'll show you how I do it here, and then, like I said, then you can practice on it, get everything removed, and then start your edit. Now, here's one thing you can do. If you want to get rid of this leaf, I'm just going to circle around this leaf like this, and you see it just grabs the whole thing and removes it. It's really easy, and then I'll just come over here, and you can readjust your brush size, and I'll just paint over that blemish right there. And then there's some blemishes on the flower, which I'll just paint over it like in here, like so. And, over here, if we look, you'll see a blemish here. This bugs me right here. You see this little bit of a leaf out of focus coming down here. I'm just going to paint over that, and let's just get rid of it just like that. It's really simple and easy to do. There's this little light area up in here. I'm just going to paint over this entire area and see how that just cleans that up. And even right up in here, here's a little dust spot I have right here. I'm just going to click on that and get rid of that. And just look for anything that you think is not nice on the flower. There's like a little bug right in here, so I'm just going to paint in this area here just like that. And see how it just cleans it right up. And you can go over it several times if you need to, and it just cleans it up. I love this remove tool. It's so easy to use, and that's basically it. So practice on that, clean it up, and I've already done mine, so here it is right here. You can see this is my cleaned up version, but you saw what I was doing on the image before anything was removed. And now we can go ahead and start the edit. Now, as always, I'm going to do an opening, balance, and contrast. I'm just going to come up to my TK9 multi-mask panel, click on my luminosity mask button, click on midtones 3 just to protect me from clipping shadows and highlights. Output it to a color grading tool, and then I'll start out by clicking on the shadow button. We're going to build some shadow contrast into this. I'm going to take the brightness slider and drag it to the left. I'm going to take it over to right there, -40. Now I'll click on the midtone button, and we're going to open up those midtones. I'll take the brightness slider and drag it to the right. And I'm going to take it over to right there, +30. And now I'll click on the highlight button. And let's just open up the highlights a little bit. And I think I'll open those up to right there, +21. Now let me go ahead and shut this layer off. Here's before and here is after. So we're off to a really good start. What is next? After the first initial balance and contrast adjustment, I feel the greens are a little oversaturated, so we can take care of that. Now, the best way to do that is use a color mask. Right now, my color grading tool is in the way. I'll click the X. Nothing changes on the color grading layers. I'm going to click on my color mask, and I want to sample a color in the background here, like right here, and click OK. Actually, what we are doing is creating a layer mask, which I'll apply to a hue saturation adjustment layer so I can work on color, but we can refine this mask. So what I'm going to do is, you see on this color bar up here, we have two handles, one on the bottom, one on the top. I want to encompass some more green. I'm going to take this top handle, click on it, and drag it to the left. And you see how areas are getting lighter. Those are the green areas, and I think maybe somewhere right around there is good. And now I want to take this brightness slider and drag it to the right over to somewhere like right around there. Now all these light tones are green. I'm going to output this to a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'll click on this button right here. And now all I have to do is make the adjustments. So I'll take the saturation slider and I'll start to drag this to the left. And I'm going to take it over to like right here, a -45. Now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, just toning down that green. And now if you'll note on this leaf up here, you see there's like a little bit of a blue color cast in here. And what I want to do is get rid of it. So we can use another color mask. So we'll come up and click on the color mask button again. And now with the color picker tool, we're going to sample like some of the blue tone right here. And I'll click OK. And now I'll click on this brightness slider and drag it to the right to lighten it up. Remember, we're making a mask just to target any blue. Anything you see in light is like a blue tint. So what I'll do is I'll put this to a hue saturation adjustment layer. And now the first thing I want to do is work on the hue. So I'm going to take this hue slider and start to drag it to the left. And I'm going to try to find that hue, which I think is like right about here, like a -47. And now it's too saturated, so now we can take the saturation and just pull it back to a kind of blends. You see that? Right about there. Looks pretty good. So now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here is after, and we got rid of that color cast, which makes me happy. And now as I study this image, I'm looking at this green right here. To me, it just feels a little oversaturated, so I want to reduce that saturation. I'm going to click on my color mask button again and sample like this color, like right about here, and click OK. I want to lighten up these light tones, so I'll take the brightness slider and I'll start to drag it to the right, over to right there. Let's output this to another hue saturation adjustment layer, and I want to pull back on that saturation, so I'm just going to drag it to the left, over to right here, -30. I believe that'll be good. Let me shut this off. Now just look right in this area. This is before and this is after. It just tones down that saturation a little bit. To me, this is attention to detail, and these little adjustments sometimes add up to really good final results. Now, next up, I'm noticing, you see up in here, see this little bit of a pinkish tint, and there's not a whole lot of saturation in these light areas. I would like to color these areas to match the greens around it. And to do that, we can use a TK action. Now, if your TK actions aren't open, click your TK action button and then look for color clone. Click on color clone and you're going to get a color picker. And so what I want to do is sample this color right here because I want to use this color here. So I'll click and click OK. And you'll notice I have a blank pixel layer in the color blend mode. This is what color clone is using, a color blend mode. And what I'll do at a low opacity of 20%, if you don't have 20%, just type your 2 key. And then with a small, very soft edge brush, you can start to paint over this. You see that? Now I'm lifting my brush and painting, kind of blending this in like so. But I just think that looks a whole lot better. I'll make my brush smaller and just come in here a couple times. And I'll even paint over this a little bit. And now I'm going to sample. If you hold your Alt or Option key down and click on a color like right here, you'll sample that color. And now I can paint over here. And see, I can just add some of that color in there. Now I'm lifting my brush as I paint each time. And as you can see, I'm adding some of that color in there, and then you can blend around. But that color blend mode is really nice for doing this. And then over here, see this area right here? If I sample this color, I can come here and just paint a little bit of that on there. I use this technique a lot for flower images because the backgrounds can get some weird colors. I can use like color clone to paint over them by sampling colors close to that area. But I think that's nice. So let me go ahead and shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. Isn't that nice? Again, this is what I call attention to detail, and you really got to pay close attention when you're working on flower images. All right, I'm continuing to study the image. Now, this area right over here looks too light to me. It's drawing my eye, so I want to darken that up a bit. I'm going to use another color mask. It seems like just about every mask I've used in this flower image has been a color mask, but flower images have a lot of color, so color masks are very effective. So I'm going to click on the color mask button. I'm going to sample a light tone like right here because that's what I want to darken, and I'll click OK. And notice these light tones that I've selected. I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up by taking this brightness slider and dragging it to the right, just somewhere right about there. If you'll notice, this is the flower. It is in black, so it's totally protected. And this is why a color mask can be so effective for flower photography or any type of photography when you have colors that are close in luminosity values, but you want your mask to protect one color from another when you're making an adjustment. Now I need to output this mask, and I'll output it to a burn tool painting through a selection. So we have two sides in a burn tool. Left side 50% gray layer, right side transparent pixel layer. And this time there is a reason why I will use the right side, and you'll see that in a little bit. So I'm going to click on the right side. That's going to give me a selection. You can see by the selection indicator here, I have a blank pixel layer in the soft light blend mode. And now at 20% opacity, and if you don't have 20% opacity, type your 2 key on your keyboard. That'll give you a 20% opacity brush. And now I'm just going to paint on this area. Now, if I go over that rose, not a problem, right? Because that color mask is absolutely protecting it. So what I want to do is anything that I see light, I'll just paint over it. I'm lifting my brush, painting over this a couple more times. As you can see here, I can come down in here. See, it's just toning that down so we don't see it as much. Okay, but I'm not done here, but let's shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, but see how that really helps. And I can do one more thing, and this is where the transparent pixel layer comes into effect. If you hold your Command or Control key down and you click on this layer right here, we will select that as a selection. And you can see the marching ants there, right? And what I'll do is output this selection to a hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm going to click on this, and there's that mask right there. In fact, if you click on this double arrow button, you can see there's that mask. But see how that rose is protected? Pretty cool, right? Click the double arrow again, we can see the image back. And now I just want to pull back in that saturation a little bit. So I'm going to take the saturation slider and drag it back to like right there, -24. And I can use this lightness slider to further darken, and I'll drag it to the left over to right there, -23. So let me shut off the hue saturation adjustment layer. Here's before and here's after. See, just a little more darkening, and it pulled some of that saturation back. If I shut both of these layers off, this is what it looked like before, and now it looks like this. But you see that now our eyes are going more to the roses, and we're not being drawn to this light area. As you can see, this is what it looked like before, and now it looks like this. And now it's time for another TK action. If your TK actions aren't open, again, click your TK button. I'm going to use a color luminosity action, so I'll click this button. And we have this black and white adjustment layer, which is set to the luminosity blend mode, letting us adjust the colors luminosity values. Now, I do have a limited color palette, but I do have pink and green. So that's what I'll work with. So I'm going to work with greens, and I will darken the green tones a little bit. I'm going to take those down to a -9, and then I'm going to work with magenta, and I just want to darken those up a little bit. I'm going to take them to right there, a -22. Now let me shut off the color luminosity layer. Here is before, and now I'll turn that layer back on. Here is after, and I like that. And I think the midtones are a little dark, so I'm going to come to the multi-mask panel, click on the luminosity mask button, click on midtones 1. I always like to use that one. I want to lighten up my midtones. I'll put it to a curves adjustment layer by clicking that button right there and clicking on the screen blend mode button on my combo panel. And now let me shut off this midtone adjustment layer. This is before and this is after, and I think that looks really good. And now, how about another TK action? This time it will be a vignette action. I think this image needs a vignette. I'll click the basic vignette button. That's the first vignette. A Gaussian blur dialog comes up. I just accept the radius for the Gaussian blur the way it is. Click OK. And this defaults at a 30% opacity. You can increase the opacity if you want a darker vignette, but let me shut this off. Here is before and here's after, but I think that looks good. And now I want to increase the overall exposure of the image. So I'm going to click this button on my combo panel. This gives me an exposure adjustment layer, and I'll just click on the exposure value right here just to highlight it. And I'll hold my shift key down on my keyboard, click the up arrow one time. That's 1/10 of a stop. I'll click it one more time. This is 2/10 of a stop. And now let me shut this layer off. Here is before, here's after. A couple more steps and we're done. You see this out of focus leaf, this light area. I just want to darken it. And very simply, I'll just come to my combo panel and click on the right side of my burn tool. I'm still at 20% opacity, and with a nice soft edge brush, I'm just going to paint across here like one time. I lifted my brush, I'm going to paint again. I'm going to paint here one time, just like that, in one little spot right there. And let me go ahead and shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, and I like that. I think that looks good. Now, one final thing, if you'll notice right here, in the center of this flower, I just like to lighten this up just to draw your attention here a little bit, not too much. And you can leave this step out if you don't want it, but I just want to lighten this area up right in here, and I'll show you how I do it. Now, if you'll notice, this is a bit of a orangish tone in here, so another color mask. So I'll come up to the multi-mask panel, click on the color mask button, and the color picker comes up, and I'm going to sample this color right here. Click OK. And now you can see the selected areas that are light. I'm going to go ahead and just lighten that up just a little bit with this brightness slider. Not much, just somewhere like right about there I think should be good. I'm going to output this to a dodge tool. I'm going to use the right side of the dodge tool. I'll click right here. I get a transparent pixel layer in the overlay blend mode, painting through a selection. I'm going to lower my brush opacity to 10%. Right now it's on 20. I'll type my 1 key. That'll get me 10%. And then what I want to do with a nice soft edge small brush, I'm just going to start painting on here. Now I'm lifting and painting. Every time you see me paint, I've lifted my brush. And so I just want to lighten up some of these areas just to bring our eye over to them. Even back in here, this little bit of an orangish yellow glow in here. Maybe I'll lighten that up a little bit, something like that. Now, let me go ahead and shut this layer off and look over there. Here's before and here's after. See how that just lightens it up a little bit, but I'm going to further refine this. Now, I still have the original selection, but what I would like to do is make this dodge layer a selection of its own. So let me show you how I can do that. So I'm going to Command or Control click here. And you'll notice I get this message comes up, warning, no pixels are more than 50% selected. The selection edges will not be visible. That's fine, just click OK. And now to output that selection, I'll click on the Hue Saturation Adjustment button. And now you'll notice I have a Hue Saturation Adjustment layer with that mask. And if I click this double arrow button, there you can see it right there. I'll click the double arrow again. And what I want to do is pull back on the saturation a little bit. So I'll pull this saturation slider back to like right there, a -30. And I want to lighten it up a little bit. So I'll just drag the lightness slider to the right to like +20. Now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. Again, before and after. Now if I shut both of these layers off, this is what it looked like before, and now I'll turn them both back on, and this is after. And I like that. And that was the final step. Now let's take a look where we've come from. I'm going to come to my combo panel and click my before after button. We started out here and we end up here, and I'm really happy with the way this edit turned out, and I hope you give this one a try. Well, there it is, everyone. Another TK Friday comes to a close. I hope you enjoyed today's full edit tutorial. If you did, please give it a like and share it with your friends, and if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click that bell notification icon, click all so that you'll receive all notifications. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.